Hey guys, Daniel here. Before we get to the video, I just wanted to let you all know I have a discount code for select EVGA products, such as graphics cards and motherboards. When you click the link in the description of any of my videos, my associate code is applied to your card upon checkout. If you do purchase something using my code, I do receive a little commission. Click the link in the description to learn more. Hey everybody, Daniel here. Welcome back for a brand new video. Today we are going to be building the Stimulus Check PC. Before we get started, I'd like to go through a quick rundown of all the parts we have here, starting from left to right, our left of course. We have the MSI B450 Tomahawk Max for the motherboard. For the CPU cooler, we have the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2 240. For RAM, we have the Team Group T-Force RGB 16GB kit. I believe this is 3200 MHz speed. This box right here is simply just some white PSU cable extensions. For the power supply, we went with a Thermaltake Smart BX1 550 watt 80 plus bronze power supply. For storage, we're going to go with a all NVMe storage. I also threw a 1 terabyte spinning disk in there just to have as a bulk storage. The CPU is the AMD Ryzen 5 3600, and the graphics card is the MSI GeForce RTX 2060 Super. This one's going to look awesome with the rest of the RGB in the case. And finally, the case, we have a Cylon AeroCool mid-tower ATX case, some cheapo case on Amazon, but we decided to give it some flair by painting it, and you can see that in the last video as well. Alright guys, let's get going with the build. The only tool you'll need for building the PC will be a Phillips head screwdriver. If you're installing an M.2 drive, make sure you have a smaller Phillips head bit as well. First, pull your motherboard out of its box and remove it from the protective anti-static packaging. Remove the SATA cables, the I/O shield, and the M.2 screw. Place the motherboard on top of its box. This gives you a good anti-static working surface for installing the first set of components. Let's get the scariest part of building the PC out of the way and install the Ryzen CPU. Be careful when removing it from the plastic enclosure. Once the CPU is out in the world, line up this gold arrow with this white dot on the motherboard. Lift up this lever and make sure it is pointing straight up. Gently insert the CPU without applying any pressure. When the CPU is sitting flush within its socket, lower the lever towards the motherboard until you hear and feel it click into place. When installing your RAM modules, be sure to line up this keyway with these notches within the RAM slots on your motherboard. On every motherboard I've seen, DIMMs A2 and B2 will be the two slots getting populated, and you can see on this motherboard the word first is printed. On this particular motherboard, the RAM slots have two tabs on the top and bottom that need to be pressed down before installing the RAM. Once they've been pressed down, insert the RAM modules into their slots while providing even pressure on the top and bottom until you hear them click. Repeat this for the second stick. Depending on your CPU cooler, you may or may not have to remove these 4 screws. For both the stock AMD cooler and the all-in-one liquid cooler I had to remove these screws. If you're installing the AMD stock cooler, it comes with thermal paste pre-applied. When installing it, be sure to line up the AMD logo with the rear of the motherboard. Tighten the 4 screws in an opposing star pattern. When installing your M.2 SSD, line up this keyway with this notch on your motherboard's M.2 slot. Angle the drive at about 45 degrees and push it in until you feel it click into place. Secure the drive using the included M.2 screw in your motherboard's box. The Arctic Liquid Cooler comes with these K-brackets that need to be angled inwards for AMD CPUs. Use the 2 longest screws included in the cooler's hardware to secure them and remove the warning label from the cold plate. This cooler comes with its own thermal paste in a small packet, but I have a tube of the same stuff. Apply a small amount about the size of a pea in the center of your CPU. Gently lower the cooler's pump housing down onto the CPU and secure it using these 4 screws, tightening each screw only a little bit at a time until each screw is snug. Always tighten CPU cooler screws in an opposing star pattern. Take this connector coming from your CPU cooler and plug it into the CPU fan header on your motherboard. The words CPU fan will be printed on the board. There's a slot in the connector and a tab sticking up from the CPU fan header. Line them up when connecting the CPU cooler to the motherboard. Now you can start prepping the case for the rest of the build. Begin by removing both side panels. This case has 4 thumb screws holding the acrylic panel and 2 more screws holding the metal rear side panel. Put them both in a safe place for now. Take out your case's hardware and set it aside. Go ahead and install your motherboard's I/O shield now. If your I/O shield has printed text on it, make sure it's facing right side up. If there isn't any text on your I/O shield, you can have the circular holes pointing towards the bottom of your case. Press each of the corners of the shield until it clicks into place. This may take some work, as you can see. When installing your power supply, point the fan downwards. Use the screws included in your power supply box to secure it to the case. 1 screw per corner. This particular power supply isn't modular. If you want to see a build with a fully modular power supply, click the link in the video description to watch my last PC build. Connect your SATA storage drive using the SATA data cable to the drive at one end and to the motherboard at the other end. Connect your SATA power cable to the drive at one end and to the power supply at the other end. This is a motherboard standoff. Most cases are labeled with where you need to install them. Some cases even come with all of them pre-installed. This case only had 4 installed and I needed to install the other 5 for my RTX motherboard. You may or may not need to install all 9 depending on the size of your motherboard. Now time to install the motherboard. Lower the motherboard into the case at an angle so you can line up the rear I/O with the I/O shield. I had to remove both case fans I installed to have enough space to install the board. This is an RTX motherboard that needs 9 screws to install, 3 across the top, 3 across the middle, and 3 across the bottom. You might have less screws if you chose a smaller board for your build. I'm going to secure the Arctic radiator to the case using these screws with these washers. The screws in the video were incorrect. I did in fact install the correct screws after realizing this. After installing your radiator or front case fans, reinstall the front panel onto the case by lining up its dowel pins and gently tapping it into place. The LEDs in this front panel are powered by SATA power directly from the power supply. These are the power switch, reset switch, power LED, and hard drive LED connectors. They get connected in this orientation to the front panel header labeled JFP1. The positive terminal for both the power LED and hard drive LED need to be on the left pins. The power and reset switch just need to be connected to their respective pins. Their orientation doesn't matter. Now I'm going to connect the front panel I/O starting with the USB 3.0 and 2.0 connectors. The USB 3.0 connector has a notch in the middle of it that lines up with a keyway on the USB 3.0 header on the motherboard. The USB 2.0 connector has a blocked off pinhole that lines up with an empty pin on the motherboard's USB 2.0 header. MSI prints big capital letters that say USB on the 2.0 header, making it very easy. I forgot to record connecting the HD audio connector. This goes on the very bottom left corner of the motherboard. Here's some time lapse of my cable management. If you purchased a cheaper case like this one, you will probably have to break off these PCIe slot covers. Simply press inward on them and begin bending them back and forth until they break free. They can be thrown away. Now we're finally ready to install the graphics card. Remove any plastic adhesive and any protective covers from the GPU and its pins. Locate the top PCIe slot on your motherboard. Press down on the PCIe slot tab so that it's ready for the GPU, similar to installing a RAM module. Line up the GPU and press in towards the motherboard until you hear and feel it click into place. The screws used to secure the GPU to the case will look similar to power supply screws. They should be included in your case's hardware. I apologize for not getting a better shot of this for the video. Unfortunately, I didn't record myself connecting the 24-pin ATX cable and the 8-pin CPU power cable into the motherboard. The 24-pin ATX connector is the long connector on the upper right corner of the motherboard. Line up the thumb tab on the connector coming from the power supply with the notch on the connector on the motherboard. The 8-pin EPS or CPU power connector usually is in the top right corner of the motherboard next to the rear I/O. Connect the GPU power cable coming from the power supply to the GPU. Alright guys, we are finally ready for our first test boot. I've got a keyboard and mouse plugged in, so let's get right onto it. Oh, make sure you turn on the switch for the power supply. 1 second. There it is. And 3, 2, 1.
Yay!
Let's hit that delete key. Oh, we got some life. There's our BIOS. So we've got, let's see, I think it should say we've got our Toshiba 1TB spinning disk. We've got our Seagate FireCuda NVMe drive, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that is pretty much it. This thing is looking awesome. We've got our MSI 2060 Super showing off with the RGB lights. We've got the RGB on the front of the case. We got our RGB RAM, RGB fans. Unicorns are having a blast in this thing. Alright guys, so the best part of any PC build video is obviously the peel on the side panel. Princess, please do the honors.
Jesus. Oh my god.
That's what she said.
That is not...
Looking pretty. Alright guys, if you stuck around this long, I really appreciate it. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell so you're notified for all future uploads. Make sure you hit that like button, let me know what you thought about the video down in the comments. I really appreciate all of you guys. Thanks. Have a good one.